My wife cheated on me with my best friend, then convinced my parents to sign over their house worth $350, $0 to her, and now she's suing me for half the inheritance, claiming I stole her supposed business profits of $200, $0, all while hiding a secret bank account with $150, $0. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Jessica, turned out to be a lying, cheating piece of work. Honestly, I still can't believe it's real. Just a few weeks ago, everything seemed fine, well, as fine as it could be in a marriage that had started to feel a little stale. I had no idea that behind her pretty smile and sweet words, she was plotting her next move. The thing is, I saw the signs, but I didn't want to believe them. It's crazy how blind you can be when you're in love. It all started subtly. Jessica had been acting a little off lately, more distant, secretive with her phone, sneaking around at odd hours. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed from work or dealing with some family stuff. She's a real bitch when she's upset, snapping at me over the smallest things. But then I noticed she was deleting messages, even hiding her screen when I walked into the room. I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking. Maybe she was just tired, maybe she was worried about her job or something. But then came the night I found her phone in the laundry room. I was grabbing some clothes and saw her messages pop up on the screen. I didn't mean to look, but I couldn't help it. There were texts from some guy, an unknown number, talking about meeting up. The messages were flirty, suggestive, and explicit. She was telling him how much she missed him, how she couldn't wait to see him again. My stomach dropped. I stared at those words, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't say anything that night. I just kept quiet, trying to process what I'd seen. But every time I looked at her, I felt this gnawing suspicion. I started paying closer attention. The way she avoided my eyes, the way she'd get defensive when I asked her about her phone. She'd say I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, but I knew better. I felt it in my bones. Something was wrong, and I needed to find out what. One day, I decided to follow her. It was impulsive, maybe even stupid, but I couldn't help myself. She left the house in her usual rush, claiming she was going to meet a client for work. I followed her to a fancy hotel downtown. I saw her go inside with a guy, tall, good-looking, and clearly not her boss. They checked in together, and I watched from a distance, feeling like I'd been punched again. She was cheating on me with my best friend, Mark. I couldn't believe it. My mind was racing, trying to process how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to what was happening right under my nose. That moment hit me hard. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. Mark was supposed to be my friend, someone I trusted. And Jessica, she was lying to my face, pretending everything was perfect while she was screwing around behind my back. I stood there, watching them go into that hotel room, knowing that everything I thought I knew about my marriage was a lie. My world was crashing down around me, and I didn't even know where to start picking up the pieces. After I saw Jessica going into that hotel with Mark, everything changed. I stayed there, hidden behind some bushes, watching, trying to breathe through the shock. I couldn't believe it. My best friend, my wife. All at once, it felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. I had no idea how long they'd been doing this, how many times she'd lied to my face about working late or being busy with friends. The pieces started falling into place, and I felt this burning rage grow inside me. I didn't want to just confront her. I wanted to make her pay. When I finally got home that night, I was a mess. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that fake, innocent look she always put on. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see through her lies. I remembered the way she'd snap at me when I asked about her phone, the way she'd get defensive if I brought up anything remotely personal. She told me I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, but I knew the truth now. She'd been lying to me for months. The following days were a blur. I started digging into everything: bank accounts, emails, her phone. I found out she'd been secretly opening a bank account, hiding $150, $0 in it. I had no idea where she got that money, but I knew it wasn't from her business she kept bragging about. Turns out she'd been funneling profits into that secret account for months, pretending it was her savings or some side hustle. I was furious. She'd been lying about her income, about her success, and meanwhile she was cheating on me with Mark and hiding money from me. I felt so betrayed, so stupid for never questioning her. Then came the worst part. I discovered she'd somehow convinced my parents to sign over their house, worth about $350, $0 to her. She played the innocent victim, told them I was an untrustworthy husband, that I was stealing from her or hiding things. My parents, who'd always been so supportive, fell for her lies. I couldn't believe she'd manipulate them like that, just to get her hands on property and money. I was ready to explode. How far was she willing to go? How much more was she hiding? I confronted her finally. I told her I knew everything, the affair, the money, the house. Her reaction. She flipped out, started crying, claiming I was crazy, that I was accusing her of stuff she didn't do. She told me her business was legitimate, that I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. She called me insecure, told me I was overreacting, but I could see the lies in her eyes. She was a master manipulator, and I was just starting to realize how deep her deception went. I felt a mixture of disgust and heartbreak. How could I have been so blind? How did I let her get away with this for so long? That night, I sat alone, thinking about everything: the betrayal, the lies, the stolen money, the house. My mind kept racing. I felt so numb I didn't know whether to cry or scream. I had trusted her, built a life with her, and she'd thrown it all away for some stupid affair and quick cash. And Mark, my so-called best friend, he'd betrayed me just as badly. I kept asking myself if I'd ever really known either of them. The pain was overwhelming. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, and I didn't see how I could ever trust anyone again. But deep down, I knew I couldn't just let this go. I had to do something, something to make her pay, to make her regret what she'd done. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I couldn't focus on anything else. My mind kept circling back to her lies, Mark's betrayal, the stolen money, and the house she manipulated my parents into signing over. It was like I was trapped in some terrible nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I knew I had to act, but I wasn't sure what the right move was. Part of me wanted to confront her again, demand answers, maybe even threaten her. But I also knew that wouldn't be enough. She was too good at twisting things, too manipulative. I needed a plan, something precise, something that would hit her where it hurt. I started by gathering evidence. I dug into her phone records, her emails, her bank statements. I wanted proof of her affair, proof of her hiding that secret account, proof of her lying to my parents. I knew I had to be careful. She was a master at covering her tracks, but I found enough to blow her entire story apart. I printed out the messages, saved screenshots, and made copies of her bank statements. I even hired a private investigator to confirm what I already suspected, that she'd been seeing Mark behind my back for months. The more I uncovered, the more furious I became. Meanwhile, I also started looking into my legal options. I talked to a lawyer who specialized in family law and estate issues. I explained everything: the house, the bank account, the affair, the manipulation. She told me I had grounds to contest the house transfer, especially since my parents were pressured into signing documents they didn't fully understand. She also warned me about the inheritance. Jessica was trying to claim half of my parents' estate, saying I'd stolen her business profits of $200, $0. That was another lie. She'd been lying about her income, about her success, just to justify her greed. I knew I had to fight her legally, but I also wanted to make her pay personally. One night, I decided I'd had enough. I set up a meeting with her, knowing she'd try to spin her lies again. When I confronted her, I laid out all the evidence in front of her: screenshots, bank statements, the proof of her affair. Her face turned white. She started sputtering, trying to deny everything, but I wasn't having it. I told her I knew she'd been lying all along, that I had the proof she couldn't deny. She started crying, calling me crazy, saying I was ruining her life. But I just stared at her and said, "You're not the victim here. You've been cheating, stealing, and manipulating everyone around you, and I'm done pretending I don't see it." That was the moment I decided I'd take back control. I told her I was going to fight for my rights, my marriage, my money, my peace of mind. I told her I'd expose her lies, get my parents out of her grip, and make her accountable for everything she'd done. She looked furious, then desperate, trying to guilt-trip me, trying to make me doubt myself. But I'd already made up my mind. I was done being the victim of her schemes. I was going to fight for what was mine, my dignity, my money, my future. And I wasn't going to stop until she paid for what she'd done. The confrontation with Jessica was just the beginning. Once I had the evidence, I knew I had to move quickly. I wasn't about to let her keep manipulating the situation, especially with her trying to claim half of my inheritance and the house. I contacted my lawyer again and laid out a plan. We challenged the house transfer, citing undue influence and misrepresentation. My parents were clearly pressured, and I had enough proof to show she'd lied her way into getting that property. The bank account was another piece of the puzzle. I found out from my investigator that she'd been funneling money into that secret account for months, probably to hide assets from me and to fund her affair with Mark. I also started compiling everything I had: screenshots, bank statements, emails, witness statements. I wanted to make sure I had a rock-solid case. Jessica's lies were piling up, and I knew she'd try to spin it all in her favor, but I was ready. I filed a formal legal challenge against her claims to the estate and the house. I also filed a restraining order, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I needed to protect myself from her manipulative tactics and possible retaliation. I felt like I was in a war, only I was fighting against a master manipulator who'd been lying to everyone, including my own parents. Jessica's reaction was predictable. She went into full-blown bitch mode, trying to turn everyone against me. She called my parents, crying and telling them I was trying to steal her business profits, that I was a jealous, insecure husband. She insisted she was the victim, that I was the one cheating and lying. She even lied to the lawyer, claiming I'd been violent and abusive, stuff that wasn't true at all. I knew she was just trying to distract from her own guilt, but I refused to be drawn into her games. I had the evidence, I had the law, and I was ready to fight her every step of the way. Meanwhile, I started to realize how deep her manipulation ran. She convinced my parents to sign over the house, promising them it was for their future, but it was really just her way of securing her assets. She'd lied about her business profits, claiming she made $200, $0, yet I found no proof of that income. It was all smoke and mirrors. She'd been living a double life, lying to everyone, hiding money, and trying to turn my own family against me. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I kept thinking about how she'd betrayed me, how she'd used her charm and lies to get everything she wanted. I also reached out to Mark. I needed to hear his side, though I already knew the truth. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just looked guilty and apologized, saying he'd been manipulated by Jessica, that he never wanted to hurt me but got caught up in her lies. That didn't make it better, but it confirmed what I already suspected, that they'd been in this together from the start. I realized I couldn't trust either of them, and I had to focus on protecting myself and my assets. I knew that Jessica's next move would be to fight me in court, to keep the money and the house, to try to paint me as the bad guy. But I was prepared. I'd already gathered enough evidence to show her true face, and I was ready to fight for everything she was trying to steal. The court dates started coming faster than I expected, and I knew Jessica was pulling out all the stops. She was spinning her web of lies even thicker, trying to portray me as the villain in her twisted story. She filed a counterclaim, claiming I'd stolen her business profits of $200, $0, even though I had proof that she'd been lying about that income for months. Her lawyer was good, very good, and Jessica herself was playing the victim card hard, crying in court, claiming I was abusive and that she only cheated because I was neglectful. It made me sick to see how far she'd go to protect her lies. I stayed calm, though. I knew I had the evidence, the witnesses, and the law on my side. I presented everything: proof of the secret bank account, the emails with Mark, the messages she sent him confessing her feelings, and her attempts to manipulate my parents into signing over the house. The judge looked at her with skepticism, especially when I brought in the private investigator's report confirming her affair. I could see her crack. Under pressure, her fake tears turning into silent fury. I was finally starting to feel some justice, like I was starting to take control of this mess she'd created. Jessica's lawyer tried to argue that I'd been controlling and abusive, but I had no trouble refuting it. I had witnesses, my sister, my brother, even a friend who saw her sneaking out late at night. They all confirmed she'd been lying, cheating, and manipulating everyone around her. I could see her frustration building. Every time I laid out more evidence, her face got paler and her bitchy mask started slipping. She was trying to hold it together, but I saw the cracks. She knew she was losing. Meanwhile, I was also working behind the scenes on the estate. My lawyer was pushing the court to invalidate the house transfer, citing undue influence and fraud. I had affidavits from my parents explaining how Jessica had pressured them into signing the papers. I knew the judge was leaning my way, especially after I presented the evidence of her lies and manipulation. I could tell Jessica was panicked. She started accusing me of trying to ruin her, but I didn't care. I just wanted this nightmare to end, and I wanted her to pay for everything she'd done. The most shocking part was when I found out she was planning to sue me for half of the inheritance, claiming I stolen her business profits and that I owed her money. I had already prepared my defense, showing she was lying about her income and hiding assets. I knew she was desperate, trying to spin her web of deception even tighter. But I was ready. I'd gathered enough proof to show she was the one who had been dishonest all along. I realized that her entire plan was to bleed me dry, steal my property, and keep her secrets hidden. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. The final court hearing was the culmination of everything I'd been fighting for. I sat there, watching Jessica's face contort with anger and desperation, knowing I had everything I needed to finally shut her down. My lawyer laid out the evidence, proof that she'd manipulated my parents into signing over the house under false pretenses, that she'd been lying about her income, and that she'd been cheating on me with Mark for months. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, scrutinizing every detail. I could see her struggle to maintain her composure as her lies unraveled in front of everyone. When the judge finally ruled, it was like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The house was awarded back to my parents, with Jessica's claim to it dismissed entirely. The court also declared her secret bank account as part of the marital assets, which I could now access. Her attempt to sue me for half the inheritance was dismissed. Her lies about stolen profits were exposed, and her manipulations were laid bare. I saw her face twist in fury, but I didn't care anymore. I had won. After the court session, I felt an overwhelming mixture of relief and emptiness. I knew I'd been through hell, betrayed by the woman I loved, my best friend, and even my own family's trust. I realized how much I'd let myself be blind for so long, how her lies had poisoned everything. But I also learned something crucial. I was stronger than I thought. I could face the truth, no matter how ugly, and come out on the other side. I'd fought for my dignity, my money, and my future, and I'd won. Jessica's reaction was bitter and spiteful. She stormed out of the courtroom, screaming accusations about how I'd ruined her life, even though she knew she'd been caught red-handed. Mark kept his distance, probably realizing he'd been played just as badly. My parents finally saw the truth about her manipulations and apologized for trusting her so blindly. As for Jessica, she's now fighting to keep what she tried to steal, but the court's decision was clear. Her lies and scheming couldn't stand. Looking back, I feel a strange sense of closure. I've learned that trust is fragile and people can surprise you in the worst ways. But I also learned that justice exists, even when it feels like the world is collapsing around you. I'm rebuilding now, slowly, painfully, but I'm doing it on my own terms. To anyone else out there feeling betrayed and lost, trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and never let anyone take more from you than they deserve. Because in the end, honesty and integrity are what truly matter, and no amount of lies can stand against the truth.